Okay. First, we have an announcement. So I got so many requests for help and for extension last week, and I realized we didn't cover really the basic knowledge you need to finish this lab. So we made some change. So first, the deadline has been postponed to the end of this week. But maybe before that, we are going to deploy the second lab. And we already post the detailed instructions for this one. So I hope this will not frustrate you to finish those labs, because my plan for this lab assignment is I want all of you to finish all those labs, and I will be very generous in grading lab assignments. So hopefully you can get a very high score in lab assignment, and you also got 5 bonus points. So that will position you a very good position to get a B or higher than that. And if you do good in exams, so a lot of you should get an A. Okay. So today we are going to study data link layer security. So we already talked about what is address resolution protocol. I believe now everyone remembers what is ARP, what it does, because I put that in the exam. So basically, the ARP protocol translates network layer address to data link layer address. So primarily in our daily life, it is used to translate IP address to Ethernet MAC address. But the protocol itself is very generic. It's not designed for IP to MAC. It's from any network address to data link address. So we didn't really look at the mechanics before, so that is what we're going to do today. So this is what an ARP package looks like. First, we have this hardware type, which means what is the data link protocol we are using. If we are using Ethernet, this will be 0. And the prototype means the upper layer protocol, upper than the data link layer, so which is a network protocol, what a protocol we are using. If we are using IPv4, it will be 800 in DEX. Because this protocol is generic, it supports all kinds of network type and protocol type. So we have to specify the length for the address at the network layer and also the hardware layer. So the next field we have is the length of the hardware address. If we are using Ethernet, it's 48 bits, which is 6 bytes. And if the protocol length, if we are using IPv4, it should be 4. And there are 2 types of ARP package. One is request, one is reply. Request is like asking what is the MAC address of this IP address? And reply is like answering this question. So after that, we have the sender's hardware address, 6 bytes for Ethernet, sender's protocol address, 4 bytes for IP, and also target hardware address and the target protocol address. So whenever the data link layer, they have this ARP message, they have to encapsulate it in an Ethernet frame or any other hardware frame to send it out. So in this case, if we are using Ethernet, this whole ARP request is used as the payload of this frame. And we add a destination, which is a MAC, and we add a source, and we also have a type. So this type specifies this is an ARP, tells the lower layer that what the payload is. In this case, it tells the payload, it tells the host the payload is an ARP. We will show some examples for you to better understand this. So we have a simple network here. We have a switch which collects 4 hosts. They are in the same private network, 192.168.1.0. That's the network. And this switch also is collected to a router, which is collected to the outside world. So when host A wants to talk with host B, we assume that A already knows B's IP address, but A doesn't know B's MAC address. So first, A will calculate if this IP address is in my network. We studied how to calculate this, so the answer is yes. Then host A will check if I already know B's MAC address by checking its ARP cache. So we assume that A doesn't know that, so the answer is no. Then host A will construct an ARP request. Basically, this ARP request is saying, what is the MAC address for this IP 1.2? So this will be this ARP request. First, the hardware type, we're using Ethernet, so it's 1. And the protocol type, we're using IP, so it will be 800 index. Then hardware length, which is length of the hardware address, which is 6 bytes, and protocol length, 4 bytes. Then this is ARP request, so we will put 1 there. Then who is the sender here? Sender is A. So A will put its own MAC address here, which is A, then put its own IP address, which is 1.1. And A wants to know the MAC address of B, so it will put B's IP address here. But what is A going to put here? It doesn't know. It doesn't know what is the MAC address, so it will just fill 0 here. So this is asking what is the IP address, what is the MAC address of IP 1.2. So then A has to encapsulate this message, this package with a frame. And this is how the frame looks like. First, the whole ARP request is used as a payload. Then first, we put the type here. It's 0806, means the payload is an ARP request. Then A will put its own source in the Ethernet header, which is A. Then what A should put here, the destination address. So A doesn't know B's MAC address. So A wants to send this to everyone in the network. So A will use a broadcast address, which is OF in MAC. So by putting this OF here, every host in this network should be able to receive this message. So A is connected to the switch, so it will send this package to the switch. And the switch checks what is the destination address, which is OF, which means I, as the switch, I'm supposed to send this out to all the physical port. So the switch will send 4 copies of this ARP request to all 4 other hosts on this, in this topology, including the router here. So B, C, D, and the router, all of them, they will receive this frame. Then, all of them, they are going to pass this frame. How do they pass it? First, they check the destination address. In this case, it's OF, means I should pass it because it is for everyone. Then they check the type. So they know, oh, this is a ARP request or ARP packet. Then they are going to give this packet to our upper layer handler. In this case, it's an ARP handler. So the ARP handler will only see this payload part. So what they say is, first, this is an ARP request. Someone is asking what is the MAC address of this IP. Then they check the target IP address. In this case, it's 1.2. If they are honest, they are going to check this IP with their own IP. B will check if 1.2 matches with its own IP. C will do the same thing, and this router adapter and D, they will also do the same thing. So if they are honest, let's assume everyone in this topology is honest. Then C, D and the router, they will simply drop this message because this is not intended for them. But B will do something different. B will construct an UP reply. Basically, this UP reply says, I have this IP address, and my MAC address is B. So this is what this packet looks like. The same hardware type, the same protocol type, length, and the operation here is a reply. So B will fill 2 here, and since in this case B is the sender, B will put its own MAC address here, which is B, and the sender's hardware address, and its own IP address, and B knows who is the target. So B will put host A's MAC address here, and the host A's protocol address here. And of course, B has to wrap this in a frame. And the frame will look like this. First is the UP type, 0806, and the source address is B's address. So what should be the destination address in that frame? Should it be a broadcast or any idea? So in most cases, B will just put A's address here. So even though the UP request is a broadcast, everyone receives it. The reply in this case is a unicast. So B will send this package to the switch, and the switch says, this is going to be sent to this MAC address, and I know this MAC address is associated with this physical port, and it will only send this UP reply back to this host A. Only host A will receive this. So when host A receives this package, it will store it. It will store it, the content of it, in its own UP cache. The reason for this is A doesn't want to send out an UP request for each IP packet. So it will store that. So first time, whenever host A wants to send out an IP packet, it will check if I already know the MAC address. If I don't, I will send an UP request. If I already know, I will use that MAC address. But because our network is very dynamic, the IP address usually they will change. So these, the entries in the UP cache, normally they will last 20 or 40 minutes. After that, the operating system will flush the cache and send the UP request again. So in this case, after A received the UP request from B and other hosts, A will maintain a cache look like this. Basically, it says this MAC address is associated with this IP address on this physical port. So for a normal computer like PC, maybe there is just one physical port. But if there's a router, it may have many physical ports. And there is a timeout, 20 minutes, 15 minutes. So in the future, whenever A wants to send out an IP package, IP diagram to B, first, A will construct its own data. And in this own data, there will be IP headers. In IP headers, there will be the target IP, and A will put host B's target IP here. Then it will wrap this in an Ethernet header, because this is the IP part, and this is the Ethernet header. First, it will put what is the type of this payload. In this case, it's an IP packet. It's not an ARP package anymore. So it will be 800 index. Then the source address will be A's address, and the destination address will be B's address. So all the future IP communications will be sent like this. So one problem of this UP is you see that everyone can send out this ARP reply, and it's not really authenticated. So here, host C, it is honest. Host B is honest. It is sending out, I have this IP, and it does own this IP. However, it's possible that other dishonest hosts in this network, they can construct spoofed ARP replies. So in that case, a target computer, for example, the host A, they will be convinced to send the frames for computer B instead of going to computer C. Let's assume C is the attacker here. And neither host A nor host B, they know this redirection is happening. So this kind of attack is also called ARP poisoning, because it's kind of like poison the ARP cache in the host. So let's see how a malicious attacker C, in this case, can pull this off. So we're using the same scenario. A wants to talk with B. A knows B's IP address, but A doesn't know B's MAC address. So A already sent out the ARP request to everyone, and everyone received this. So in this case, host C is controlled by an attacker. He wants to do something malicious. So instead of just exploring this ARP request, host C will construct an ARP reply. So this is what it looks like. It will put the sender's physical address as C's MAC address, but the IP address as the B's IP address. So in this case, host C is trying to impersonate host B. He's taking host B's identity here, which is the IP address. And the target is A's MAC address, and the target protocol address is the A's IP address. So C will send out this message to A, because it will wrap this with host A's MAC address as the destination address. Host B, host D, they do not even know this attack is happening. So after this attack, if it's successful, the content of the ARP cache of host A will look like this. So this MAC address C is associated with the IP 1.2. And the others, they are just benign ones. So in the future, when A wants to send out an IP package to B, it is actually sending it to C, because it will put C's MAC address as the destination address at the MAC layer, at the data link layer, even though at the data part, the IP headers, the target IP will still be B's IP. This package is actually delivered to C. So because this host C is malicious, it is not going to compare if this IP is really my IP. It is malicious. It will listen to everything. It eavesdrops everything. So this is how, in a local network, host C can pull off an ARP spoofing attack. So you see here, it seems like the problem is not very serious. It seems like every time C wants to attack someone, it has to receive a request first, then then send back a fake reply. However, it's not the case in reality. Because our network is so dynamic, the computers, they change their IP address a lot. So there is one mode of ARP, which is called the gratuitous ARP. So basically what it means is when a host IP address or MAC address has changed, the host can send out ARP replies as some kind of announcement. I have changed my IP, I have changed my MAC address. So there is no need to have a ARP request in the first place. So attackers can really use this. So the attackers just announce ARP replies. This is the MAC address associated with the IP address. And the other hosts in the network, they may choose to upgrade their ARP cache. So, for example, even host C in the previous example, host C didn't receive any ARP request. It will send a fake ARP reply. And host A and host D, even the router, they may accept this fake ARP and update its cache. So why do we say they may? Because different systems, they act differently when it comes to how do they handle ARP requests and ARP replies. But this is a fundamental problem in the ARP protocol. So eventually, they are still vulnerable. So how we can use this ARP spoofing? So first, we can do sniffing. So all the traffics can be redirected to the hacker. And as we studied in the first class, if we are using a hub, the hub will duplicate all the packets and send out to all the physical board. But if we are using a switch, the switch is not going to duplicate all the packets, send out to all the ports. They will only send out the packets to the port that is associated with the packet's destination MAC address. So if host C doesn't do an ARP spoofing attack, he cannot really listen to the communication between host A and host B. But by changing this, host C can redirect all the traffic from host A to host B to host C. And another kind of attack we can do is denial of service attack. If the host C, they update the other host's ARP caches with long-existing MAC address, this means when host A trying to send out a frame and the MAC address, the destination MAC address of that frame does not really exist in this network. So when the switch says the frame, the switch will just drop that. So every packet sent out by host A is kind of like enter a black hole. So this will be a denial of service attack on host A. But we can also, in the previous example, let's say host B is a web server, and all the other hosts, they want to talk to that host B. And if we can do a ARP spoofing on all the hosts, so there will be no traffic going to host B. Then in that case, this is also a denial of service attack on host B, which is the server here. And we can also do a man-in-the-middle attack. So host C can spoof both host A and host B. Whenever host A wants to talk with host B, the package actually is sent to host C. Then host C will repackage it, send it to host B. So host C can listen to all the IP communications between A and B. So let's see what kind of security objectives we failed to achieve here. First, confidentiality. Any idea? Eric? No? Why?
No. Because without knowing exactly how it works, but the sniffing, you could listen to any of the traffic, and it's not encrypted, so you could.
So basically, here we're talking about two things. First is the confidentiality of the ARP message itself. Then is the confidentiality of later IP communications. So is confidentiality really a problem for the ARP message? Someone is...
It's all clear text anyways.
Yes. Not only because it's a plain text.
It's going to have
it is broadcast. It's supposed to be received by everyone, right? So the confidentiality for ARP is not a problem. But if the cache is poisoned, the future IP communications, that will be a problem. And in the ARP package, there is no really user data. But in IP package, there might be your own data, it might be your password, it might be your sensitive documents. So confidentiality is not a problem for ARP, but for later IP packages, yes. How about the second one, integrity?
Yeah, they're injecting their own MAC address, right?
Yes. So we can see that every host, they have a ARP cache. And the integrity of that, we cannot maintain because attackers inject fake entries into that. So integrity of ARP cache. How about availability? This one should be simple. We just explained. It's possible that the DOS attack on hosts in the same network. So how about the last one? Authenticity. 2 layers. First is ARP, the second is IP. Do we achieve authenticity in the ARP layer? No, right? Because when we send out a fake ARP reply, we are impersonating someone else. How about the IP? The same thing. The host, the malicious attacker C can impersonate host B in this network by sending out package to A on behalf of B. So both for the ARP package and also for later IP packets, we fail to maintain authenticity. So let's do a quick summary of the attack models and the root cause of this before we move to defense mechanisms. The attack model describes what the abilities the attackers should have. So in this case, it's very simple. The attacker must reside in the same local network as the victim. So that's why sometimes this problem, the ARP spoofing cannot be propagated across the boundary of the network. It will be the attacker has to sit in the same network. And the root cause of problem of this attack is because there is no method in the protocol itself that can authenticate the peers from which the package originated. So the message is not originated, the ARP messages, we cannot authenticate it is from the actual host. So how do we defend against this attack? The first, very simple but not very good approach, we simply use a static ARP cache. We do not update the cache based on the ARP request message. Whenever we receive an ARP reply message, we simply ignore that. Whenever we want to update it, we have to go through some kind of vetting or maybe manually to verify we should actually update this ARP table. However, obviously this approach is not very practical because our network is so dynamic. We have, when you come in this classroom, you collect your computers, you connect your phones to the Wi-Fi. So there are a lot of new devices collecting to our network. So every time if we have to have an administrator to end this, it's not practical. And it's very hard to keep the table up to date. So the second approach, there is a program called UpWatch. It's a free open source program that listens to ARP replies on a network. So it will build a database of these MAC and IP associations and stores it. And whenever it noticed ARP IP pair change, it will send an email to the administrator. So, but still, this has a problem because this program runs on a host in the network. But the host in the network, it doesn't see all the ARP replies. It will only see the ARP, the gratuitous ARP replies. But if there is a request and the unicast reply, as a host in the network, you do not really see that. And also, it will send this message to an administrator. So still involves a human intervention. So last week we studied crypto. So we want to see how we can use crypto to solve this problem. So I find a paper. It's from XAC. So XAC is a decent conference. We also publish several papers there, but it's not a top-tier conference. So the papers, the protocols they proposed here, there are still a lot of loopholes. But I feel it gives you a good sense how we can use crypto to solve this problem. So this paper was published 10 years ago, 2003, and this protocol is not standardized because there are a lot of loopholes. So they proposed the protocol called a secure ARP, SARP. So how does it work? Basically, they want to use asymmetric crypto, public key crypto, to provide message authentication. So they don't want to do encryption because there is no need to maintain confidentiality of the ARP message. And in order to do this, any host, they want to use this protocol, they have to install this SARP protocol stack. So any SARP secure ARP enabled host is identified by its own IP address and a pair of public and private keys. Then there is a very simple certificate, provides the bindings between the host identity, which is the IP address in this case, and its public key. So the certificate has to be signed by someone. That's what we learned before. But in this case, because this is in no-code network, it's very hard to do that. So they offer a very simple approach. So any host can sign its own certificate. Even though it's not very secure, they have another mechanism to make sure it works. So any host, if they want to connect to the no-code network, they will first generate a pair of keys, public and private, and construct this certificate, sign it by itself, then send this certificate to an entity called AKD. So AKD here is a trusted third party. So trusted here is a very important word in security. Trusted means all our security solutions is based on our belief that this entity is trusted. It doesn't really mean the trusted entity is trustworthy. It's possible that this trusted entity will also be compromised. But at least we know that if it is compromised, all our security protocols based on it will not be secure anymore. So in this case, we have a trusted entity, which is, they call it AKD. And AKD is actually another host running in the same network, and it's maintained by some network manager, some administrators. So whenever there is a certificate sent to the AKD, the network manager has to manually verify that this certificate is valid, which means this IP address actually is associated with this public key. That's why this protocol is not practical, because it's not automatic. Still, we need human managers be involved. Then this AKD will store this certificate, which is an IP address, and the public key is in its own database. So So all the hosts in this network, they are supposed to send the certificate to the AKD, and the AKD is going to manually verify that. For example, host A, it will send its own public key and IP address. B, C do the same thing. If host C is the attacker here, he wants to send its public key and its IP as a certificate to the AKD, the manager will notice that and will reject this. So we'll know that in the AKD we have all the valid certificate, even though we did that manually, not automatic. So whenever there is a ARP request, and there is an ARP reply, or there is another ARP reply someone sent proactively, all the ARP replies, they have to be digitally signed by the sender with its own private key. Oops. Sorry. For example, when host A asks, what is the MAC address of 1.2, and B will reply, 1.2 has this MAC address 0B, and the B will sign this message with its own private key, which looks like this. Then when host A receives this message, it will first retrieve the certificate from AKD, because AKD is a trusted entity in this case. From that certificate, A can also get the public key of 1.2, which in this case is B's actual public key. Then A can do a decryption to verify if this signature is valid. And in this case, it is. So host A will accept that the IP address 1.2 actually has this MAC address 0B. So if an attacker, let's say C, wants to attack this, so C will send out the IP address 1.2 has a MAC address 0C. But he has to sign this. He has to sign it with its own private key because C doesn't have B's private key. So the package will look like this. This is 1.2 has MAC address 0C and a signature signed by C's private key. Then when A receives this message, first retrieve the certificate from AKD, which means the public key of 1.2, and this public key is actually host B's public key, not host C's public key. So it does a decryption, generate a signature, and it will say that signature is different from the signature sent from C, so it will reject this ARP reply. So in this case, host C cannot pull off a spoofing attack. Make sense?
So why did they design this instead of just upgrading the switch to actually manage these connections? I mean, it's got a physical connection with Ethernet. So.
Yes. So there are some attempts to do that. But basically, when we say switch, we have the traditional concept of switch, which should only work at the layer 2. So they should only look at MAC address. But right now, switches, they are very smart. Like especially in the SDN environment, the switches, they will be able to look at all the fields. So technically, all of this can be achieved in the switch. Yes. Make sense? Any other questions? So like I said, this protocol itself has a lot of loopholes. It has not been standardized, and I don't think it will be. But you can see how we can use symmetric crypto to protect this. So this protocol will not be in any exam or quiz because it's not a very perfect one itself. So the next class, we are going to talk about the network details, the attacks on IP protocols, ICMP. After that, we will study a very practical protocol called IPsec that is actually used in our daily life to protect our network transactions.